as to why I'm an entrepreneur now to begin with. And that started with, the American dream set by my father, who decided to move to this country.
I noticed, by the way, you got 30 Under 30 in the 425 magazine.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Mark.
Mark.
Hi, Mark.
Mark. Hey, Mark Halley.
The Mark Halley Show.
How did you do it and why?
Hey, this is Mark Halley, and this is the Mark Halley Show. Today, I think we have a really compelling guest. He is Vozhi Adiaman, and I hope I got that right. Vozhi has been, he's done a lot in his life. But I think the best way to describe him is through his mission statement, which outlines his real estate business. And let me read that rather than try and remember it. To integrate estate investing with culture, music, and technology to inspire positive change in the community. Like, I just think that's a really cool mission statement because a lot of them are kind of bullshitty.
Yeah.
But anyway, hey, so welcome. How you doing?
Hey, Mark, how you doing? I'm honestly blessed to be out here.
Great.
Even the slight conversations we've had right before the show have been very interesting and, fun. So I'm excited to be out here.
Cool.
And share my journey a little bit and
Yeah.
learn more about you.
Well, you don't have to learn about me right now. It's on you.
Okay.
But maybe after the show.
All right.
But
Yeah.
right. There's nothing all that special about me. So
I doubt that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, I obviously I read a lot about you. And so you got started in real estate.
Yes, sir.
But we have a lot to talk about here. You
Absolutely.
got a lot to talk about here. You got real estate, you got music, you got your Tamil. We're just going to hit it all. So
Okay.
let's start with real estate. How'd you do that? Why?
So, I have to take it back, right? So, just as to why I'm an entrepreneur now to begin with. And that started with, the American dream set by my father, who decided to move to this country, right? So
Okay.
my parents, like my, father and mother, decided to voyage from a land that was a lot more familiar to them over here in search of a better opportunity, for their two children, myself and my younger brother. So, them moving over here, and being the firstborn immigrant child, there was this natural sense of responsibility that I felt towards honoring their sacrifice.
Yeah.
And business had always been a passion of my father's, in wanting to, get into upon moving to America. But in the pursuit of providing for his family, like that never, that didn't really manifest in his life until much later. But so that was always a fascination of mine. But I didn't really have a direct influence. Right. So that was kind of the initial seeds that were planted. And I always knew I wanted to be successful. So my initial path towards that success was what I knew, which was, go to school, get good grades, go to college,
Yep.
Get good grades over there, get a good degree, and, get that coveted, 6-figure income, and boom, now you're successful.
Yep.
So I actually took that route. I went to UW, got a degree in electrical engineering, and I
Well,
worked.
electrical engineering.
Yeah.
That's for smart people.
Well, what's funny is I actually Googled, the reason I did electrical engineering was my freshman year. I Googled what major is going to pay me the most money.
There we go.
And then the top choices were computer science, electrical engineering, and a bunch of other engineering majors.
Yeah.
And then business, this, and that. I applied to a bunch of them. Didn't get into computer science, which was my top choice. Got into electrical engineering. So I was like, all right, I'm going to just ride this out and just get that
just
degree.
Do it.
Yeah. And to be honest, I didn't really like it, but I finished.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's all you need to do.
Yeah, and after finishing, I got I got a job at a company called SAP. I later transitioned to Microsoft, and my last ever corporate gig was with a company called Accenture, where I consulted for T-Mobile.
Yeah. I know.
So that was around the time where I'm like now 24, 25 years old. Knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and now 4 or 5 years into the corporate world, and absolutely hated it. Like,
Yeah.
I've paid off my debt, right? I'm making good money, but I feel like, just like tied to the shackles of the corporate life. And I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. That was always the seed that was planted in me. And throughout this, 4-year, 5-year time period, I'm also reading a lot of books about entrepreneurship. I knew that the corporate thing was a short time period for me to stack up some money, pay off what I got to do, and then eventually get into entrepreneurship. And just after reading a lot of books, I just read the common theme amongst a bunch of millionaires was real estate.
Yeah.
And I wanted to launch some sort of product or service. I would have loved to have, found a mentor like yourself earlier on in my journey. And
Might have turned you the wrong way.
You may have, I don't know. But, I'm glad things went the way they did.
Yeah.
But somehow I stumbled upon real estate because it hit me that I don't have to reinvent the wheel, right?
Yeah.
It's a product that already exists, right? There's buyers, there's sellers, and people that lease this product. And coming from kind of the program management, project management world, and being a previous developer in the corporate world, I decided, let me just take these skills and map it to something a lot more tangible. And decided, I want to be a real estate investor, and that's going to be my path towards entrepreneurship. And so around that time period, I decided real estate is going to be my vehicle, and we can get into that, into like kind of my business and what I did in that lane. But when I was leaving the corporate world, right, one of the things that was very important to me was I wanted to be like a full, complete person.
Yeah, very important.
Yeah, and you could probably relate to this from various aspects in your life. In certain business situations, especially in the corporate world, when you're working for somebody, right? When you have extracurricular activities, sometimes it's frowned upon, even if it doesn't bother the work you're doing. Just because,
people want to see you throw in 120%.
exactly. And even if I'm throwing in 120%, right? Like, in comparison to somebody else, and I have extracurricular activities, it's still frowned upon and maybe could be perceived as, oh, he might not be fully interested in the job.
Yeah, you're not putting it down.
Right. And I didn't like that because I wanted that.
How did you then? I mean, now all of a sudden you say, hey, I'm hanging out, I'm 25.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to do real estate. So what do you do?
So the first thing I did was, interestingly enough, quit my job.
Well, there we go.
I knew I wanted to do this full time, and I had tried other, entrepreneurial stints, like, trying to sell clothing and, e-commerce and things like that. That didn't really work out. And I knew that it didn't work out because I wasn't fully invested in it because I had a job during the time I was trying. And I knew that, okay, at this point in my life, like I, saved up enough money, paid off my college debt, like I'm good for like a year on expenses for myself. I could pay my rent, pay for da-da-da-da-da. So I decided, all right, I'm going to get into real estate. And the way I'm going to do this is by, reading a bunch of books, consuming a lot of like YouTube videos, and additionally going to real estate networking events in the city. And I did that like, quite frequently.
Sure.
Toward the early part of my journey. And in fact, networking is still a big part of
it's in everything.
You already know. So doing that initially, what I realized was I was meeting a bunch of these real estate investors that were successful. And I started asking them questions as to like, hey, how can I be helpful to you in your business? And how can I provide value for you? In exchange, learn from you, right? And the common answer from a lot of them was, find me in deals, properties that are not listed on the MLS, where the property owner would be interested in selling. And especially if these properties have some sort of value add to them, if you were to lock it up at a certain price, I'll pay you, a little bit more to just take over that deal you have with the seller.
Yeah.
So that was my initial aha moment to be like, wait, I can do this. Like I have data knowledge, I have the ability to market. So kind of went crazy. So I quit my job, and then it took me 6 months of like zero income, like after.
I know that feeling.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And then I got my first ever, check via real estate. And that was like a $14,500 check.
Whoop, whoop.
It was amazing. You know what I mean?
No,
It's not about the amount, but it's just you
touchdown.
Put the touchdown. Yeah. So that was that first deal. You never forget that first deal. And the person that bought that house ended up, flipping that property. It was a house in Greenwood. He bought it from me for like $450,000, put in like $100,000 into it, ended up selling it for like $900.
That's money.
Big money. So I saw what he did and kind of went through that entire process with him, saw who he went to for financing, saw who he went to for the actual rehab process, which contractor he used, saw which real estate agent he used to sell the house, and kind of, studied this entire process. And I did another deal similar, found another investor who kind of did a similar, type of structuring. And now I have this mapping of how this project timeline works, right? So the next deal that I found, I'm like, I'm gonna do this myself. So, because I got the financing in place now, hard money loan. I got a couple of contractors that I can ask for bids.
You can trust.
And then now I got a couple of real estate agents that could, list the property for me. And did that a couple times, was successful. And then throughout that process, I'm realizing, wait a second, if I got my real estate license, I can just list that myself
on your own, and
then increase my profit margin.
You just cut people out. You just take in margin.
So exactly. So I just took that margin. So that's actually why I became a real estate agent. And then this was early 2018, right? So now I'm like 2 years into this business, and that opened up an entire revenue line, because I've been active on social media, talking about my real estate ventures and sharing my profits and losses and being
I saw
some
of those.
And that helped create a lot of trust within the community that was tapped in.
Did you have any flops?
Thankfully, I haven't had like I've had situations where I put a lot of work in, where I thought I was gonna, have a home run, and it ended up being like just very, very minimal or broke even. But thankfully, throughout my entire journey, I can't say that I've lost money.
Okay.
I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah, no, I'm thankful I didn't either.
Yeah.
I fortunately, they say sometimes with people, oh, go into a green field. And I'm like, what green field?
Yeah.
I sold bags. I went into a field that was like packed with
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
like you. I just thought people are buying this shit,
Yeah.
and, it's bags. It's nothing fancy, but people are buying them. And can I just muscle my way in there and, fight and make some cash?
Yeah.
And I was able to do that. When would you say you said, wow, I'm good at this? What? I mean, you must have developed. It never happens the first year, but how many years before you were just like, I know my shit?
It kind of happened in waves, I would say. You know what I mean? And I think, like, if I were to honestly answer the question, and so I started this in 2016. Now it's 2025. Like, this is my 9th full year, right? Like, really doing this. If I were to honestly answer that question, I think maybe like 3 years ago, when it really hit me. Like, okay, now I really feel like I know what I'm doing, and I see where this is headed. I understand the game a lot better now. Whereas the first 6 years, I think, like, after my first deal, you feel this initial sense of confidence, like, oh, I'm the shit. And
I'm in.
It's honestly just young arrogance, right? At that time. And I made mistakes and, things of that nature. And then all of a sudden now I'm going through a drought. And now I'm humble again.
Yeah.
and then you get the deal and you're back at it.
Yeah.
So it's this kind of wave, but then you learn who you are, and you learn a lot about yourself throughout this entrepreneurial roller coaster of emotions that you feel.
I think the thing that I learned through it is that, I used to always joke with guys is, the gods of sales will shine upon you if you keep chopping wood. And that means, don't let, there's years where I worked harder than any year and it just went to shit. And then the next year I'll feel like, man, I didn't bust my balls quite as much, and shit takes off.
Yeah.
So why is that? I'm mystical, spiritual. I could play this game forever.
Yeah, no, I'm about it. I believe in that. I believe, so, being in sales, you kind of have to believe in
and it's all a head game. Once you break in, it's all about doing just what you said. Some of the most, I still at the end could make mistakes that I would curse myself about on the way home. Like, why did you get sucked into that? And now, you're shaking your head, but you got to shake it off.
Yeah.
You just got it. You can't be sitting there freaking out about the thing you did wrong 2 things ago.
Yeah.
So how did you boost yourself with that? Did you use any outside source, read stuff? What would you say your primary avenue for maintaining stability?
Yeah. The answer to that is God.
Okay.
And I want to get into that. And I think just being in sales and being in business, you do exhibit traits of faith, right?
Yeah.
You can't start a business and not have belief or faith that it's going to succeed, right?
Yeah.
It is, it's like, otherwise, why are you starting the business?
Yeah, it's got to be. I mean, you got to come out hot.
Exactly.
You got to come out hot.
So there is this
hot.
element of faith that it's a lot deeper and more esoteric than I think a lot of business people realize.
Yeah.
And I'm very thankful to have had this spiritual journey throughout this process, and be connected to God.
I think that I agree with you that you can get into these existential crisis where at times you're overthinking it. I'm a big huge history reader.
Okay.
That's how I know about India.
Okay.
And we'll get into that later.
Yeah.
But and then sometimes you just have to say, okay, enough with that.
Yeah.
I'm on the earth. I don't know where I'm going to be exactly after here. I don't fully understand why I'm here, but I know it's a good thing.
Yeah.
And I know I'm not going to stop doing it.
Yeah.
I'm just not going to stop.
Yeah.
And,
absolutely.
It
kind of gives you this resilience, right? And I'm not like a religious person by any means, but so interestingly enough, I want to get into like this, so me being Tamil, and you've been to India before, you understand the what type of
the massive difference between it. Now, Tamil, for those who don't understand, then I'll let you explain it, is down in the very, if you look at India and you see it kind of goes rolling down to the bottom, you go all the way down there and look to the right, kind of eastern side, if I have it correct. And you have a very sense of independence as a
Mm.
province or state. If I was reading correctly, in I read through all the stuff, the Indian news and all that.
Yeah.
So tell our audience a little bit about that.
Yeah. First of all, I'm impressed by your knowledge, as is. And to expand on what you said, first of all, Tamil, if you Google it, right, it's the oldest spoken language in the planet that
Right
still
on.
exists,
Yeah.
right? There's text we have from 2,000, 3,000 plus years ago that we're still able to consume and gain wisdom from, today. And it's an ancient civilization, even outside of language and, culture and customs, right? So if you look at kind of the Indian subcontinent, it's held its own unique, kind of, power dominance,
Yeah, yeah. It's a
culture,
huge
history.
culture.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at, Singapore, Thailand, Indonesia, these were all,
Yep.
Tamil colonies.
Really?
Yeah.
I've been to most of those.
Yeah.
Not
If you
Indonesia.
go even Thailand, Thai is a Tamil word. Thai means mother in Tamil.
Really?
Yeah. And if you look at a lot of the architecture and the temples that are out in, Thailand, those were built by ancient Tamil kings.
Really? I love some of the architecture is so cool. There was one that was like this, it was like a triangle, really
Yeah.
colorful.
Yeah.
And I saw it last night and I'm like, whoa, that is some cool shit.
Yeah.
Because I had been to Angkor Wat. Do you know
Okay.
Angkor Wat up in northern Cambodia,
Uh-huh.
which they found
Yeah.
like 11th century. And of course, the Western world's like, whoa, these
Yeah.
dudes had some brains. They
Yeah.
were ripping.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say that, but
Yeah.
they were fascinated by just the complexity of it.
Yeah.
And it reminded me a little bit of the architecture I saw on your websites. So tell me more about that. How did that play a role? How did that culture play a role in who you are today?
Yeah, after coming to the United States, so I actually, grew up the first 8 years of my life, back home in Tamil Nadu. And my grandfather was a, Tamil poet, Tamil historian, teacher, and somebody that was, really deep into the culture and left that, uh, the pride and,
Yeah.
the what I had to take about the culture, like deep within me. Even before coming to America. And after coming to America, there weren't too many other, Tamil people, especially in Seattle, like in the late 90s, early 2000s.
No, to say the least.
Yeah. And so it was something that was just, deeply, passionate topic and something that we just kind of held on in the family with my parents. And, growing up, my mom would make me, read and write a page of Tamil after moving to America for like a day. Or
Cool.
for every single day for, like years. And we would watch Tamil movies, like, consume Tamil music. And so the culture was a big part of who I was. And, growing up into my, teens and, like early 20s, obviously, like I became deeply assimilated into American culture and hip hop and, music and things of that nature here as well. And so now I have this kind of blended identity. And as, social media really started taking a rise, right, in the mid 2010s. That's when the fascination and the seeds for pride that were planted early on really started to take shape, because now social media started really just bringing the diaspora together. And if you think about the Tamil history as well, right, Tamil people exist at large in multiple places, but they were mainly concentrated in two particular regions, right, and that's in southern India, in Tamil Nadu, as well as northern Sri Lanka.
Yeah, I saw that. There's like a little. They got like all of a sudden I was looking at all the little colors and stuff, and it's like the little northern hunk.
Yeah.
So I guess some people rolled down there and were like, "Hey, we're
they were
Tamil."
always there.
Oh, were they?
They were always there, right? Sri Lanka is it was a Tamil colony, for like many years. So without getting into like the politics and history of it, there's a period of time in the the 80s, 90s, and 2000s where millions of Tamil people from Sri Lanka just left, and now they're scattered all over the world, right? And this has been happening, and so the culture kind of exists at large from both of these different places. But now coming into like 2015, 16 time period through social media, all these people
pulling it all together.
All these people are starting to get pulled together, and all these people kind of had a similar upbringing to me, where their parents were deeply passionate about their Tamil culture, instilled it onto their kids, and now there's kids making content and movies and music and things of that nature. So I kind of got pulled into the fascination and pride that I already had.
Yeah, rightfully so.
Yeah.
So was there? Okay, here's a question. The typical Indian/Tamil movie. What's the kind of theme? I'm kind of always interested in. Is it like a romantic story or some sort of a God related story or what I don't know. Just because I don't know the language. I see the films and to me it's just like, whoa, whatever.
So first of all, there's multiple different industries within India. The one that's most popular that you probably know of is called Bollywood.
Yeah.
Right, and we have our own industry called Kollywood, which is like Tamil. It's Tamil based, right? And a lot of the movies, like it's all the genres really, like and it's a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Sure, I'm sure.
Yeah, so any genre you can think of, it's there. God-related movies, like romantic movies, action movies. But I would say like kind of a general theme that wins a lot of people is concepts of righteousness. That's instilled in a lot of the the main protagonists within Tamil movies. The concepts of taking that ancient wisdom of Tamil culture and instilling it and showcasing it in the modern sense.
Yeah,
that's really appreciated in the culture with the protagonists of a lot of the movies. But yeah, it's in all genres.
Same old. Just how do you turn people on? You got to stir them up.
Exactly.
Now we love superheroes.
Yeah,
we are into the superheroes.
Yeah.
Whoever they are, Marvel's off the charts.
Yeah.
I don't even know the name of these people.
Yeah.
They're coming in, they're going to beat everybody up. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
Flying through buildings and shit. I'm like, how many times can we fly through a building? It's like, guys, come on, man. The last 15
They're just
minutes.
interrupting somebody's job. It's like, come on, man. They're just trying to get their work done that day. Just leave them out of it.
Yeah, make some cash that day.
Right.
But anyway, so when you started to get raised here,
Mhm.
I imagine there's two things that went on. Number one, you're not from here per se, and number two, not per se, you're not from here, and your parents are they a little bit like bummed out that you're kind of sliding in the American way rather than your natural culture? And in that turn, did you feel any like discrimination, resistance from people like me? I don't think I was, but you never know what you are, when you're living life.
Maybe it was exactly you. A lot of
I
time
know
ago.
exactly.
No, I'm kidding.
No, it could be. When I'm fighting for money, anything I can use.
Yeah. But no, that's a good question. I think my parents were definitely, protective of, me not going the wrong way.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, just being adults, coming from a different culture, trying to protect their kids, they probably had a vision of, what to do and what not to do for their children and how they wanted to raise them. So I'm sure there was that protective guidance that I was a part of, which led me to be a good kid for the most part.
Yeah.
There's obviously a bunch of things I did as a kid that, they don't know about. And
join.
You know how it goes.
We in.
Yeah. I mean, we're just boys, right? Boys being boys. But outside of that, never got in any serious trouble, been a good kid, been a good student, kind of put myself together. But I do think that because I am fluent in the language and I'm able to communicate with them in the language, fluently and do have like a sense of who they are. And I know a lot of, immigrant kids kind of have this disconnect from who their parents actually are because they've never been there.
Or they just in a way almost resent their parents.
Right.
Like, I don't want to be that way. Oh,
No.
you're this way.
No.
I could see that being very easy to influence.
And I'm sure there was like moments that happened, obviously, as human beings dealing with other human beings throughout my journey with my parents. But there's always been a deep sense of respect for who they are and the voyage they took over here.
Of course, me
right?
too.
And the sacrifices they made. You understand.
Yeah.
So because of that, they, there was always that element there. And on top of that, I was always doing kind of the right things in their eyes. I got good grades. So they kind of just, because I got the grades, they just like, they don't care what time I come home. They don't
do your thing.
Do my thing, right? So
that was, for me, I'm one of 8.
Yeah.
From Philly. Big Irish Catholic family.
Wow, okay.
And so
East Coast, yeah.
Oh yeah. So the first 4 Eagles fan.
Okay.
If you watch American football,
okay.
Fucking Eagles.
All right.
But
gotta represent.
Don't fuck with us. Don't not fuck with us.
Okay, I won't unless it's against the Seahawks.
Well, I don't give a shit about the Seahawks. Seahawks are going to go down.
All right.
Okay. You know, yeah, they're flying in the eye, up in the air.
Yeah.
You wait
Okay.
till the birds show up. But anyway, so my family was very similar. My 4 oldest brothers and even my sisters were high performing, but I went the other way. You know, I was like, you know, I'm not going to do that. I don't know whether I didn't do it. I just didn't, you know, so I got into the, you know, hardcore party scene.
Okay.
You know, and very much never big time with the law, but just, and you look back, just an idiot, you know, but that landed me in rehab.
Damn.
So, you know, a nasty thing. It was around my mother's death. Which,
how old were you during this time?
I was 25.
Okay.
And I've been
Very
clean
young.
since then.
Amazing.
You know, so that was my kick in the teeth.
Yeah.
I think we all need it.
Yeah.
But now let's circle back to real estate for a minute.
Okay.
When you ultimately, and we're going to talk about this a little bit, but you ultimately started to feel like you had time available to pursue other interests. And so you had to have a little bit of, I mean, I noticed, by the way, you got 30 under 30 in the 425 magazine.
Yes, sir.
That's congratulations.
Thank you.
I mean, that is not easy. What do you do? Do you go run around and say, hey, I'm 30 for 30 and hope somebody hears you?
No, it was actually interesting how that happened.
30 under 30.
30 under 30. Yeah. So during that time period, this was 2018. Now I'm over 30. Still, you know.
No, you're old, man.
Yeah.
Oh, now you're come to the end.
I know, crazy. Yeah. But so during that time, 2018, there was this, you know, property that my partner and I had bought, and it was bought with the intention of, you know, renovating and putting back on the market. And we bought it, and it was actually the lowest priced single family home that was bought in King County that particular quarter, right? So someone from the Puget Sound Business Journal reached out, and they just, you know, asked some questions about it, and they wrote this initial article about this. And I told them in that article that I intend to, you know, flip this property and put it back on the market. So they wrote this like slight little piece, and then a couple months later, when the property was renovated, they gave us this like, you know, 2-page cover, like kind of updating that story,
right on,
talking about the flip and, you know, how it was successful. And
now the chicks are coming after you.
Not that they weren't before, you know what I mean?
Come on,
Hey.
had to step it up a little bit.
Yeah.
Didn't hurt.
Didn't hurt. No. But and then so that happened, and I was like, that was just a cool moment. And then through that now article, obviously a lot more people saw it.
Bang.
Somebody from the 425 Business magazine saw that, and then they reached out, and they're like, hey, you're a young guy, you're doing real estate, can we talk to you real quick? I just had a conversation with the chief editor, and then she just recommended me. She's like, hey, we actually have, like, timing is crazy. We were looking for one other candidate to be the last 30 under 30 recipient, and we think you're a great candidate. You fit.
Well, your parents must have been proud of you.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Oh man, that's bringing that one home.
Oh yeah, that was amazing. Yeah,
good for you, and good for them.
That's the ceremony was definitely something that I would not forget, because it was like a great validating moment in my journey, because I had began, you know, my entrepreneurial journey at that point, you know, 2 years prior. So, you know, 2 years later, now, you know, their son got the 30 under 30 award, and, like, you know, meeting with the mayor of Bellevue, and you know what I mean? Like, it's just
you gonna run for office?
I don't know. I mean, it's like it's not like an immediate aspiration, but I definitely want to.
You really would think of that. I mean, not that it's right or wrong. The idea of becoming an elected official.
It's more. It's like it's more rooted in the sense of I want to create positive impact, as it's stated in my mission statement, right? And whatever, you know, however life takes me to do that, you know, I'm not necessarily constricted to wanting to do. I can do it in many ways as an entrepreneur and just you know, a philanthropist in my future as well. Yeah. But
so when did I've listened to a handful of your rap videos. I was listening to them last night with my wife.
Nice.
You know, because my kids do rap. I don't. You know, I'm like, what the hell? So
Bridget does rap too?
Oh yeah, Bridget's into rap.
I gotta hear some bars.
No, she doesn't do rap. She listens to rap.
All right, okay.
And Beyonce. She loves Beyonce.
Who doesn't?
Yeah. I think I'm not misrepresenting there, and she can't break in now. So anyway, so all of a sudden, you know, reading your mission statement, clearly music was part of it. When did you kick into that? Because that's, you know, you do some really nice videos, by the way. You know, so how do you know? So now you're trying to create this mission statement.
Yeah. So to give you, I have to take it back. It's all, you know, it all kind of goes back in a lot of ways to actually, you know, my Tamil culture, right? And the language itself is just super poetic. You know what I mean? It's like it has its own version of just like, speaking in rhymes.
How do you consider it? What would be the sound of it that would create this poetry? Like if you were to speak some of the words, just let me hear what you would consider per se a poetic piece.
I mean,
in the language.
I mean, I'll share so there's a text called Tirukural, and it goes back over 2,000 plus years, and it's a set of 1,300 plus couplets, right, that are written about how one must live life with most righteousness, and it's orthogonal to religion. Anybody can read it. It's just like a handbook to how to be a good person, right? And there's a bunch of couplets from that book. If I were to just read or tell you the first one, which I actually have tattooed on my chest.
But say it in the language. I'd love to hear
it. I'm about to tell you. So it goes, Agara mudala yedittellam adi bhagavan mudatre ulagu.
Oh, so
try saying that.
Bang, boom. I'm out.
And you want to try another one?
E, F, G. Yeah, lay it on me.
Karka kasadara karpavai katrapin nirka adarku taga.
Try serious.
Try it.
Say the first word.
Okay, all right, listen. Karka kasadara.
Karka kasadara.
Karpavai katrapin.
Karka beta trapin. All right, I'm done. Come on, don't be doing. You're making an idiot of me.
No,
My daughter speaks
I love
Spanish.
Hey,
you could probably roll.
I'll tell you this. If there's Tamil people watching this, they would respect you so much for the fact that you're asking me about this and you're trying to say it, right? It's no,
props. Bring it because we need it.
Yeah.
Our country, the whole game here is, come on in. Everybody says, discrimination. Let me tell you what.
Yeah.
You make money here, no one cares.
Facts, exactly.
Then, boom.
So let me tell you this, to kind of answer that question about,
let's go to music.
The music stuff. Okay, yeah. So with Tamil music, or with Tamil culture itself, it's a very poetic language. Just poetry and rhyming is deeply instilled in the culture as is. People just talk in rhymes.
Yeah.
Right? And my grandfather was a Tamil poet.
Cool.
And an author, so he was deeply, entrenched in the culture. So arts is a big part of the culture, and on top of that, we have our own music genre called Ghana music, that's existed, hundreds of years, probably thousands, and it's very simple, based out of drum patterns and people just talking about their life.
What are those drum patterns? Just play them real quick. That's horrible. Who would listen to that?
What are you talking about?
Oh my God!
We're gonna cut that out. Yeah, no, get out of here. Okay, but anyway, so that kind of, but then people are, rhyming over it. So there's this, element of like a parallel culture to hip hop that existed in Tamil culture for just many years, like thousands of years, hundreds of years, whatever the case. And coming to America, having experienced that, now like being this kid that doesn't really, is trying to get assimilated to the culture, barely knows English, discovers hip hop. And now I get assimilated to the culture, learn the language a lot better.
It's like music to you now. It's combining.
It all clicked. And I've always been a creative individual, and kind of hearing hip hop music, like most people that hear it, I think every person that, listened to rap tried to rap at some point. I was one of those kids that tried to rap, and I found that the words came easy to me. I was able to memorize, even the raps that I was listening to well. And it created this fascination towards creating music that I kept with me. And while I was in the corporate world, I wasn't able to really put myself out there and express myself. And that was one of the things. It's like when I decided to begin this journey and, write that mission statement in 2016, I decided I want my life to be in 3 parts. I want to do real estate, to create my income and money and be self-sufficient. I want to, create music and, put myself out there to express myself and have that, esoteric spiritual connection through words, because words are powerful.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm very intentional about the words I speak in my music as well. And so that's this other element of, doing things with the music sphere. And I've done a bunch of things even outside of my own music with my community, where I've funded artists that have done really well.
Good for you.
Independent artists and things of that nature. And the third thing is, community. Coming from, an immigrant family and not really having the resources for entrepreneurs and people to guide me and create that right mentality. I recognize that there is a gap even in today's society for a lot of kids that want to be a lot more successful. And because of that, I provide, events and, structured networking type of services.
Man. Good for you.
Stretch
that out. the Irish, when they came over,
Yeah.
they ran from England because they were Catholic, and the
Mm.
English were like, we hate Catholic.
Yeah.
And there was a famine, so this huge number of
You guys
Irish
had
came.
it pretty bad.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
so my family got here in 1840,
Wow.
and just peasants. I mean, we're talking peasants.
Mm.
And there were signs my grandfather showed us where my grandfather or somebody had around the house that said on stores, Irish need not apply.
Mm.
And couldn't vote. Couldn't vote for a while. Weren't allowed to hold political office.
Wow.
You couldn't borrow money because the money was all English,
Mhm.
and they were like, "We're not going to give it to those dirtballs."
Yeah.
And we're Catholic,
Yeah.
which was against it. And finally, but prior to all these non-discrimination things, it's a long time
Mm.
to break in, and that's why President Kennedy,
Mm.
like my mom, they burst into tears.
Mm.
That, oh my God, finally.
Mm.
After, what, God, 140, 20, 30, 40 years,
Yeah.
we got somebody at the top. So,
Yeah.
I think just
That must have been
in
a crazy
here,
feeling for the whole
in
community.
hearing you speak this way,
Yeah.
how much of a, I don't know, I just think your parents or whoever, somebody, maybe it's your great-great-grandchild or, you know what I mean?
Mm.
Maybe it's your grandchild that
Mm.
pops through, and now you're intensely, proud of that.
Mm.
It may, sometimes in the States, we love you making money, but you got to, oddly enough, you got to get your culture fully assimilated so you
Mm.
can get votes. Because our game is just, this is just money and votes, unfortunately.
Yeah, money and popularity.
Yeah, just get your name out there.
Yeah.
So who knows? Maybe it's going to be Vozhi, and they're going to say, "What's that?" They're going to say, "Tamil rap, Tamil rap, Tamil rap." I don't know. I'm trying to say something cool to put on the on the commercial.
Yeah, no, I hear you. No, I mean, I'm not sure if, I'll like necessarily land in politics, but it's like I want to create impact, you know what I mean? However, it stretches out in my, say like later in my life, 40s, 50s and 60s, like who knows?
Well, 60s. That's where I am, 65. You're looking at me going, "Oh, I love it. 40s, 50s, 60s, older in my life." God damn.
Hey, but you have that energy that makes me realize even when I'm 60, I still got
no.
decades.
Keep it there, man.
Yeah.
Because I think in business, I've
Yeah.
always said to people, there's nothing that overcomes passion.
Yeah,
Whatever you're doing, it's contagious.
absolutely.
And, some of these folks who, I think a lot of guys like you're talking about in like tech, I don't know them specifically, but my friends who are smart as shit and they're in some technical field, their job doesn't bring them much passion.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I do it, I work it, I'm smothered under some big organization, I get a good pay, I get good benefits,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's kind of, it's a weird saying, and I don't want to criticize anybody, but it's like dead man walking.
Mm.
They sucked it out of you.
Yeah.
They gave you a little more money. Now you
Yeah.
can't leave. They gave you a nice car. Now you can't leave.
Golden handcuffs.
Yeah, man. And you're just stuck.
Yeah.
And that was my biggest thing at like 37.
Yeah.
And I think you've said it already is
Yeah.
I had no choice.
Mm.
It wasn't like maybe, sort of, kind of. I had 3 kids and I just cut the cord.
Mm.
Screw it. It was like life and death
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah.
And I think for you, just listening to you, you split from a technology. You're making some probably half decent money in the tech game.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. And you
Yeah.
just something in you. And that was what?
It's so to kind of go off this topic, right? While I was in the corporate world, someone told me you can have 2 of 3 things in the corporate world, but not all 3. And I wanted all 3. And you sound like somebody that wants all 3 of these things.
Yeah, you can't.
And those 3 things are, it's that career success where you get to rise in your career, make more money, have more responsibility, ownership, and kind of do it at your pace, that career rise. The other is, good, family/social life.
Yeah.
And the third thing is, just health, right?
Very important.
So out of these 3 things, pick 3. And if you kind of really think about your corporate friends, right? I'm sure maybe some of them kind of hit, like if they're happy, then they're kind of sacrificing their corporate climb, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And if they're not, if they want to have that corporate climb, they're either sacrificing their time with their family or their health.
Yeah, I think one of the things in my generation
Yeah.
was a little bit more lay it down,
Yeah.
and now I had 5 children, 5
Wow.
girls. So
Yeah.
I coached teams. To me, it was just more hours had to be chewed up.
Mm-hmm.
Running a business took a lot of time, but
Yeah.
my weekends were wide open.
Yeah.
And I got off on it.
Nice.
And having 5 girls as a man, you become protective.
Mm-hmm.
There's this whole sense of, I have to be the man.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's the other reason why I'm a slob, because I have to have the girls know this is what a man is. We have to all, represent a little bit,
It's smart.
Yeah. But no, you just have to be a guy.
Yeah.
And I raised my daughters to not be per se a female stereotype. You go kick some ass.
Mm-hmm. Love it.
It's a new day for women. In the past, they've worked generations. So,
absolutely.
Some guy gets in your way, dropping the old F-bomb coming out of a nice looking girl, sets guys back.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck are you doing? Well, we've been doing it.
Yeah.
Men, and it may be, maybe it's rude for a minute, but you're educated. Mm-hmm. You're an ethical person. Sometimes you just got to punch your way in.
Mm-hmm.
And, it sounds like you've done the same,
Yeah.
So,
definitely.
let's see. We're coming towards the end of the time here. What would you say to somebody, very emphatically,
mm-hmm.
who was going to do what you did? What would you tell them? We got a 22-year-old in front of us right now. What would you say?
Just in terms of like just how to be the best version of yourself.
Yeah, just what would you say?
There's this Japanese principle called Kaizen, and it's about the concept of, constant improvement, towards perfection, but you never really reach that perfection, right? And if you can kind of recognize life operates that way, where all this, time frames that are imposed upon us by business. Oh, Q1 earnings, how much did you make this year? It kind of limits us from thinking about what's really possible if you remove all that and you recognize that I'm just in this journey for the long haul. Whatever that journey is that you pick, that's, deeply passionate towards you. If you can attach a marathon perspective to this journey, outside of the timeline that's imposed by society, the blessings will start coming in.
Yeah.
And you'll feel a lot more confidence in what you're doing if you just stick with it.
I said to every young guy who sold to me, play long.
Yeah.
Play long.
100%. It's all about the long game.
Yeah.
And that goes with relationships. Like, you know what I mean? Like if you can make a quick buck in a relation, in a deal, but it's going to potentially damage the relationship, don't do that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like all these things matter.
Yeah.
And
the other one you mentioned, the Chinese saying. I always loved in sales.
Japanese, yeah.
Pardon me, I'm back to Japanese. I'm Japanese too, because I read from that.
Okay.
And there was always a saying, not always, there is a saying that you're never selling until you're belly to belly with the client. I love that, because the concept of my belly touching your belly, but it's pretty cool because it's true. Yeah. If you're not in front of somebody and able to express who you are, that expresses more than just business,
100%,
by a long shot,
100%,
that will work to your benefit.
Absolutely. Because, they're not necessarily you're not trying to sell them on something. You're trying to ask questions until you reach a mutual agreement.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
You're trying to help them and trying to help yourself.
Yeah.
Well, let me say one thing, Vozhi. You can look you up on YouTube right now to listen to some Vozhi rap, which I thought was really fun. I recommend anybody,
I appreciate
give it a check. I mean, it's good to see somebody, once again, passionate.
Yeah.
And Vozhi Real Estate is yet another avenue that will help support the rap side.
Absolutely.
So we bring it in. And also just your spiritual outlook on life, your technological outlook on life. It's good to see as a man who's maybe on the other side. It's encouraging. Love to see guys like you pushing the ball.
I appreciate you, Mark. Likewise.
Well, listen, thank you so much for coming on.
Likewise. Thank you so much.
Go out and work hard and do some music and
yes, sir.
Have fun, man.
Yes, sir. We're going to get it. I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to The Mark Howley Show. If you found this story as intriguing as we did, give us a like, share the episode, and subscribe at The Mark Howley Show. New episodes every other Friday. Adios.